make a sheath for this thing. There's a few different ways to do this. You can wrap it in paper and make your design. You can make it a template on the computer or whatever. I'm just going to make this one a little more simple. So all we need to really do is just trace the outline. We have to give enough width for the welt, and we've also got to cut out for a belt loop. And the belt loop will be on this side of the knife. Unless we wanted to make it for a left-handed person, then it'd be the other side of the knife. So I'm going to use this little scrap area up here for the loop. So we'll just start this over here. So basically we just need to make kind of a rough outline of what our sheath is going to look like over here. And then we're going to want to come up to probably about here or so. And then just take this knife and roll it that way a little bit. And then we'll kind of do the same thing here. And if you do this far enough away from the edge of the blade, you give yourself a little wiggle room for error. And up to about here. And then I'm going to want a little center mark like that. And this will come around like this. And of course, like I said, this doesn't have to be perfect. So then we also need our strap, belt strap, like that. And then if you have a little straight edge, it doesn't hurt to make actual straight lines so that things look a little better. And when I cut this stuff out, I just use my utility knife, because when the blade goes dull, I can just pop another blade in there. And I'm not hitting these lines because I want a little wiggle room. But this belt loop, I'll actually get some straight lines on there. All right, and then we will cut the welt out after we've got our final shape. So we'll basically wrap this around the knife, fold it over, get it to shape, and then we'll draw the outline of the knife, and then we'll make the welt from that. So right now we've got this and that for the belt loop. Now we want to put a little texture on this thing, because this just wouldn't look too great. Now I want to add a little texture to this because I don't want a smooth finish, and I'm not going to do any carving or tooling or anything on the outside of this. So just need to wet the leather. We're going to have to wet this again when we do the forming. But for now, it doesn't have to be soaked through the backside. When texturing, you can use pretty much anything that has a a hard texture in it. I've used pieces of slate and different things like that, but I like an organic texture. So I've got this big piece of petrified wood, is what I think it is. I'm not 100% sure, but it sure looks like it. And all I do is, after I've wetted down the leather, I just come in here, find a spot that I like, and then just start putting in the texture. And then it'll add some cool little textures like that. Just like that. The next thing we need to do is we need to get this leather wet, saturated, and then wrap it around the knife and do some forming. Basically get our fold in here, get our belt loop wrapped around. And what we don't want to do is get this knife wet and leave it wet. So you can either get some saran wrap, wrap it with saran wrap, or you can just get a Ziploc bag and put it in there like that. And then just fold it up a couple times. Like so. And seal it up. Now we just need to soak our leather and start forming. What I want to do is, because this is a drop point, I want to try to form the leather around the drop just a little bit. It won't take much. When it's a really steep drop, it's hard to get the leather to form around it. But what we want to do is just stuff this in here. Let's get our crease formed a little bit here. And then stuff the knife in here just about where we want it. And then you can start kind of basically hold up here and just start pushing the leather to form around that drop. And it'll stretch enough that it'll curve a little bit. And you don't have to do this, you can leave it straight. It's gonna look just fine either way. This is just a personal choice. There, now you can see it curves just a little bit. If you get your leather wet enough, it moves pretty easily. I think that's about where I want it. And also, if you want to form this around the bolsters or guard or whatever you have on your knife, this is the same process, except you'll work it around the bolster area. All right, so that's basically formed how we want it. Got the little bit of curve right there, a little forming around the handle and bolster. So we're just gonna leave this right here and let the leather dry. All right, so now I've got some dry leather here. So next step is to just get this blade back out of this plastic. And we're gonna put the blade back in here, about where we've got this fitting. And then open this up, hold the blade down, and then we're just gonna kind of outline the blade on the leather. Okay, so now we know where the blade sits in here. So we're gonna draw another line about a 1/2 inch away from that. And this is basically gonna be the outside of the sheath. And this will be where the welt goes. So at this point, if you want to draw some fancy shapes on the profile of the sheath, this is where you're going to want to do it. So this inside line is going to be where we place the welt, so we don't want to go in past that line. Just place your knife back in there and double check your lines. So now that we have our line, I'm going to cut on this outer line, and then this inner line is going to be where we place our welt. And don't worry too much about this cut, because we are going to be shaping this on the belt grinder. Okay, so now that we have that, we can trace this along the other side. And just cut that off. So that'll fit in there like that. We have plenty of space for our welt. And then I want this to look a little different up top here. So we're just gonna draw about how we're gonna want this to look at the top. I'm gonna go with that, and then we'll cut that off. The back will be a little more difficult to cut because you have to watch out for this belt loop. So you're gonna have to cut straight down and then follow that line. And here, you just trace that line straight, and then trace that line. And then cut that one off as well. From here, we need to decide if we want a shape here on the back side of our belt loop, because we need to stitch this up before we put our weld on and close it. So normally all I do is I just kind of follow the contour of the sheath. So I'll draw a little line on there like that, and then maybe come in a little bit over here like this, and then just round these like that, and then we'll just trim that off. that's pretty close. At this point, you want to decide what color you want to do this. When I do these, I normally do the inside black no matter what color everything else is. So you don't have to go too far down into here. Just enough that you can't see it when you look inside the sheath. And I almost missed a step. So you need to make sure to bevel your edges in places that you're not going to be able to get to once it's stitched up. You don't have to worry about doing down here because that's going to be stitched up. Black covers really well and it goes on really evenly. Lighter colors tend to have streaks and all sorts of stuff, so you just have to do a couple different coats to get it evenly covered. And then just let that dry up. On to the next step here. So we're almost ready to stitch this belt loop up, but what I want to do first is burnish a few of these edges, because you can't really burnish too well down here after this is stitched. So I'm going to use, I have some of this burnishing gum. You can use water to do this, it works just fine, but I bought this forever ago and it's just kind of what I've been using. I think it does do a little bit better on the burnishing than just water, but it's negligible. So just wet that up, find the right size little divot here, and then just burnish these edges up. This will make it nice and shiny and polished and pretty, and it also helps seal off the leather so you don't get as much water absorption if you get it wet. And then also, while we're here and this is flat, it's not a bad idea to burnish this down too, the inside part of the leather. So it's basically a suede. And if you burnish this, it makes it look more like the hide side or the leather side. I'm not quite sure if that's exactly what it's called. And then just give that a nice rub down. You can do this after it's all stitched up, it's just not quite as easy. Now we need to figure out where we're going to stitch our belt loop here. So place this on the back, pretty much where you're going to want it. That looks good to me. Then the only thing you have to watch out for is you need enough width in here that the belt is going to fit through. I just take this little tool and I kind of mark on there where my stitch line is going to be, roughly. Like that. And then mark on the sheath where that's going to be. And then that way you can get back here and you can see where you need to rough this up. And when you're doing this, kind of angle your point in so you don't leave a mark outside of where this is going to be stitched up. So once you have that marked, you can take your little roughing tool and rough up the leather. Careful not to go outside of the lines you drew. This will give the glue a nice rough surface to adhere to. And then you'll also want to rough up this side since it's a smooth side of the leather. Take some cement. I might have a little bit too much here. And then get cement on both surfaces. Let this set up just a little bit. So you know this is ready to stick together when the shine has kind of gone away. It's more of a matte look on the glue. So once you get to that point, you just want to line this back up with the lines you've made and stick it down on there like that. And I just like to tap it down with a hammer just to get that nice and set into there. And then what I'll do is I'll take a piece of scrap leather and then clamp it down with a clamp and then just leave it there for a while. That'll give the glue a chance to set up. All right, this has been drying for quite a while now, so it should be on there really well. Next step is we're gonna gouge some little lines right here where we're gonna do our stitching. So this tool works really well for that. So we just need to get our width correct on this. That looks good. And then basically this will follow the outline of what you're trying to gouge. Like that. Then you can go over it just a few times just to get some depth on it. And you may have to put some more dye on here after you've done this. If you put several coats of dye on, it probably soaked in really deep, but mine didn't soak in too deep. Put a straight edge on here so you can get your straight line across. Just like that. So once you have that, then you'll need to poke your holes in here. And the width you use is all kind of going to vary. So right here, this is almost perfect for the top here. So I'm going to put this over here on the edge. Put that right in there. And then this is where you have to kind of make adjustments so you can get things even looking. All right, that should be good there. And then what you'll want to do is come here on the inside and then gouge some more lines on the inside. That way when you put your thread through here, it's set back below the surface. And that way you don't have any chance of snagging the point of your knife on it, cutting your threads. So basically just take your gouge and connect the dots. There we go, just like that. So now your thread will be recessed. So you want to pick some thread for your stitching. And I've got this green stuff, so it'll kind of match the green in the handle. Not perfectly, but it'll still look good. Thread it, and then all I do is I come up here and I poke my needle back through there, pop it through, and you're kind of stuck on there. And then when I'm doing this type of stitching is I just put a knot or a double knot in the back end of this. That way when you pull it through here, the knot keeps it from popping through. And then all I do is I weave back and forth, and then I'll go through this twice. So basically the stitch that I miss on this round, I'll catch on the next one. I'm sure there's a million different ways to do this, but this is how I do it. Good little pair of pliers is good to have when doing this stuff. Sometimes this gets tight. So I'm just going to run back through here. Like this. And then all I do is cut that and get a thread heater or thread, I don't know what you call these, but anyway, heats up, and all you do is you melt the thread down. That way it won't pop back through the hole. Then once I've done this, I'll grab my hammer and then just hammer these threads down. It's time to put the welt in. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this piece right here and cut it into a strip. And you really don't need to worry about cutting this in the exact shape, because this leather is going to be able to curve like this. And so here's the line that we want to follow. This is the line that we drew. We had our knife in here like this. So that's the line that we want to follow right there. So what we need to do is cut an angle right here to match up into the bottom here. So you can just kind of take a guess and then put it in there and see if that's going to be right. If you want to leave a hole, like a gap down in here for water to drain out, you can do that as well. Just make sure this is gonna fit. Yeah, that'll be perfect. That'll be perfect. So we need to rough up the smooth side of this. So we're gonna wanna place some glue on here and then on here. And then glue this down. And then what we'll wanna do is place our knife in there and make sure that the fit is good. That way it's not too late to remove it and adjust it if necessary. And once this is set up a little bit, we're just going to take this and place it right in the corner here to start. And then just follow our line around like so. And then just hold this closed, grab your knife, make sure it fits in there like it's supposed to. And that feels perfect to me. So we can continue with the gluing. So once you have that down, I like to take the hammer, kind of tap that into place. And then we're gonna put some glue on our other side here. All I do to make sure I don't get glue where I don't want it is I'll put glue on the welt and just kind of close this up. That way it'll put glue onto this side and you can see where you want to apply the glue on this side. And then again, just let it set up a little bit. And then once it's set up, just close it up so everything matches. Like that. Grab the hammer. Tap it down. And then grab a scrap piece of leather and then just put a bunch of clamps on this. And at this point, I'll just leave this overnight. Give it a chance to set up completely. And just like that. And then I'll just leave this overnight and we'll do the stitching tomorrow.